Hey folks, this is Tully and welcome to some more game dev. This afternoon we're going to be taking a look at some of the intro cutscenes. We started off this morning looking at kind of finishing up the last few castle maps, and we have a little bit more detail work to do, which we're going to start with, and then we're going to move on to kind of resetting up a lot of these cutscenes. We had a couple done originally for when we were thinking the first run would be in the forest, but now that we've kind of made this demon castle zone for your first run, we're going to have our cutscenes all move to there, and we're going to have to rewrite a little bit of dialogue. But jumping into it here, we're going to start by just kind of decorating this hallway. While I had my lunch break between streams, I kind of finished setting up the walls in here. This is feeling pretty good to me. We'll jump in and take a quick look around. I'm also trying a slightly different layout for the windows. Maybe this will be easier in terms of like editing props. I might even want to make saves for some of these just so I can keep track of like my normal workflow versus like we're in map editing mode. So yeah, so this hallway, pretty basic right now. We're going to want to deco it with some tables, some lanterns. I think I'm realizing less is more in a lot of ways here too. We don't have to go too crazy and fill every tile with a prop. I think the forest will have more of that vibe. And then this thing here is going to probably be the most intense cutscene. I was talking about it last stream, but we want to have it so that this thing is animating every time you take a step, as well as pulsing a reveal of tiles as you walk in. So as you walk towards it, it will essentially reveal another row of tiles around it, kind of showing its power at like pushing back the darkness. For now though, we're going to go back to that previous room and we're going to just kind of decorate, and then we'll figure out cutscenes, because it's actually been like a few days since we've done any cutscene generation, and I know we just did a big refactor last week, but honestly all this map editor stuff we've been doing is kind of like completely taken over my brain. So I'm interested to see if we remember much, if anything, of the actual cutscene stuff. Let's jump into something a little less intense. This one's okay. I'm feeling like Molten Gate today, I think. At least for a little while. So, let's see here. I'm thinking first off, we're going to want to block off these two hallways so that you can't enter them. We're going to do the same kind of rope block that we did for the previous hallway, which I have not shown on this stream, but essentially we just can add a couple of these objects. Looking for red sash middle and then red sash back. We're also going to change the selector so that we don't get the widgets in our way. Fences. Red sash back. Okay, so we're blocking it off that way. Now this way, do we need to flip these, I wonder? Instinct says probably. Or do we... Yeah, because this is kind of designed to go in one orientation. So I guess we're going to have to add these as custom props. Even that I don't think will work. Huh. Let's try it. What if we just try connecting two middle ones? That'll probably be the easiest to get an idea of. Let's add custom. Fence, red sash middle. Add prop, custom, red sash middle. Yeah, and I think no matter how we flip these... Oh! Ah, if we flip them, they do connect. Is this meant to be a front? Perfect. I don't love this as a permanent direction. Mostly because it's a bit repetitive. I'd like to find another way to block off these hallways. Maybe it's like some rubble or destruction or something, but we also want this castle area to feel very polished. And so these rope sashes do make more sense as a kind of like, please do not enter in this way. Does this feel different from the previous hallway? Did we set up this transition properly? We did, right? Yeah. Oh, we're also missing the fades. Yeah, this hallway feels very long. Even though it has a similar kind of sash cut here, it's also a bit smaller feeling. Yeah, these feel different. This feels like a long hallway, whereas this feels like an intersection. So even if it does repeat this kind of sash technique, I think this is okay. We could maybe move them in one. I could see giving you a little bit of room to go down that hallway so it's not an immediate continuation of the wall. That could be somewhat interesting. I think guards might also be another approach we could go with at some point. So what are this? What are these? This is front. If I click this one, then this one, it disappears. If I click this one and this one, it also disappears. I wonder what the reasoning for why sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Like, the multi-select seems very inconsistent. Okay, so if we do this one, then this one. That didn't do anything. That doesn't do anything. I guess because these aren't using these fields, it needs to be a custom. So if I add a custom prop here and then select, then multi-editing works, but not consistently. And we can't undo. I have not fixed that yet. Add. Nope. Add. That one worked. Odd. Okay, let's do red sash middle, and we're going to flip them. Okay, and then these ones here all just need to have their props cleared. So we indent that just a little bit. And then on the other side here, we're probably going to want to make this a bit interesting. Something you can see just on the other side. We could do a couple of different things. I'm inclined to like having a red tapestry out here. Oh, these are only for 30 high walls. I guess that's okay. I kind of set these up maybe somewhat poorly. I did also, in between streams over lunch, very quickly set up a both walls option that allows us to choose both walls at the same time. It's a little hacky, but it works fair enough. And then we're going to change all of these to be 30. This one also needs to be 30 high. And that changes this end piece one. So instead of having a top, this will now have to be a corner. And the orientation will be west. Yeah. Okay. I think I like that variance as well. It seems pretty good. These edges on the top of the wall still need a pass. This is still very programmery art, just to kind of get it all set up. I think I'd like to have another little table here. I've been really liking them. Book and bottle table. Sure, I think that's going to be interesting for a couple of reasons. Now here, I talked to Drixie a little bit about this layout last night, and Drixie said that she would like to potentially do a fairly large portrait or painting in this section. In fact, we probably want to make these even larger. I think the largest we have right now is 40 high, which is something we threw together relatively quickly. Where's the 40 high? Oh, we haven't populated on this map yet today with the new options. Okay. Gonna go through and reselect all of these. 213, 212, 211, 210, 110, and 010. And then with all those selected, now we should see the option for 40 brick walls. We should be able to raise the height of their ceilings to be 40. But by multi-selecting and multi-editing, we have kind of messed up the room, or the rooftops. So these ones need to be east-facing, because it's going to re-edit all of them to be whatever one it decides is the primary. That looks okay. And then this needs to be a corner as well, I do believe. Corner. And this one needs to be a inverse corner. Perfect. And I think in reality, we might even just want to make these like 5 tall, just to really give a lot of room to have a large portrait there. So if that's the case, we won't worry about putting anything on the walls, but we do want to have something in the front here. Probably good to go with a candelabra here. And then in front of the portrait, I do like the idea of maybe a little table. Again, it's pretty handy, pretty useful. We'll just have it be empty here. Although fun a little too extreme. Also not going to work. Not really feeling any of these options right now. Yeah, interesting, but not quite what we're looking for. Let's do this one here. Let's change this one to... Yeah, we can't add a shield or anything in front, because if we do that... Well, number one, I changed it on the wrong side, but we're going to need to change the left side. But if we change this to a shield, it's going to drop down, which is really the problem with not doing any layering. It means that we're going to need a 30, instead of a 30 shield one, we're going to need a 40 variation, which has the same wall in behind. Out of curiosity, we did this a little bit in the last stream. We're going to give this a shot here as well. We're going to add a custom prop. We're going to do a wall of the gold shield. We're going to set it to left wall and then back to custom. And then if we just bring it forward a little bit, obviously we're in the wrong spot, but if we bring it over 1 and then up 1, 2, does that look pretty much like it's in the same spot? It's clearly floating a little bit in front, but it feels like if we just bring it over 1 to the right, and as long as it's elevated a little bit, it'll line up with the thing, with the next one over. I think 1 is too low, 2 is correct. So you know what? We probably can do layering props and just have these gold shields, windows separate with just a little bit of manipulation of the depth and the height. We can create the optical illusion that they're in the exact same pixel spot while being a little bit in front. Very cool. The only thing that's breaking this one is the fact that now it's not fully transparent. It has a little bit of a shield. And the nice thing about this is that if we didn't have the wall in the background, we could literally just move the shield to wherever we want on this wall, and it's going to feel like it's sitting in front of it. If we do this for the windows, then we can also set the windows to be not receiving or casting any shadows, which would fix some of the problems we've been having. Okay. I think this might be the solution. It does mean that we do have to do 2 sprite renderers in the same spot, whereas if we just had one texture, it would save performance, but this will be less memory because we won't have to make a different version of every wall for each height. So it's always this divide between, or this kind of back and forth between memory and performance. I think I would love the flexibility to have these things floating. It would be so much more valuable, especially because then we could actually like align the pixel height however high we want. The flexibility is going to be worth the reduced performance, which obviously we're not playing right now, so we can't see. Okay. It's kind of cool too. If we put it high enough up, we can actually get a piece of decoration in front. For the banners, these banners would probably also look much cooler if they were up this high. In fact, that's an easy thing we can try. What if we just swap number 110 for gold for one of the banners? Red tapestry? Yeah, that looks way more regal when it's 4 high and then there's a little table sitting in front instead of it being overlapped with the table. Makes the depth of the space feel much larger. Okay. I'm on board. I like it. We're going to leave it like this for now. And what we'll do is probably make it so... We should probably add like a symbol or something to certain props that we don't want to cast shadows. So that my importer can make an edit to the prefabs. Rather than me having to manually go in and modify each prefab. Yeah. There's probably a naming convention we want for these objects because this is casting a very slight shadow atop the roof here. Beyond having a little table there, which we could also just do the Royal Runner one to be a little bit more in theme. Oh, I don't like the way this one looks. I feel like the Royal Runner thing should be perpendicular, so I'm going to actually add this as a custom. We're going to center it, decide to do a Royal Runner wooden table. We're going to switch back to custom mode, and then we're going to flip it. And we're going to do the same thing for this one over here too. So we're going to add a custom one, set to preset center. We're going to table. We're going to do the one with the book and the bottle. And then we're going to go back to custom and flip it. And we need to clear the other one because they're overlapping. So then the only other thing is, do we want to try, like, the painting will be the focal point here. We'll have a very large painting up in front here. This might be enough props for this hallway for now. Oh, we didn't clear the extra one here. Cool. That's probably good enough. Again, less is more. Yeah, I'm gonna go through and edit all of these props. I think it's gonna mean re-editing or re-adding all of these tapestries, but I kind of don't love where they are anyways. All of them are under the wall section, which is making it very cluttered. I feel like we just need another folder called like wall decor so that we can just have a little bit more sorting between the two of them. Okay, let's give this a shot. We're gonna save. We're gonna also just raycast just to make sure that the data gets re-imported. What is my head blocking? It's blocking the inspector and the project view partly. That's fine. I also like this being here because it's almost like a keep right. It'll be more natural to just keep walking along this center line so that you then come into the scene in the middle. Yeah, because I also want to edit all of these. Oh, we didn't even make these yet. We want to make 2 new transition tiles. We're going to make this one oddly go to the center one, which it should already be doing. Yep. And we're going to change this one to also go to the center one so that you always come into the middle. And then we're just going to rename the entity ID of this one to be West 03. I might make it so you can't back out of the room, but we're still going to set this up correctly just in case. And I think that's this room done. And I think we have all the rooms for the castle complete. How long did that take us? Another 20 minutes. Well, it is what it is. Now we get to jump into cutscenes. I want to kind of run through the whole thing once from beginning to end. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else we want to do. Double click on game, go full screen, and let's see the whole thing. So we're going to go into the Goddess Realm still as our initial cutscene. She's going to let us know that she has to send us into the Demon Lord's castle, but not give us a ton of information about why we're here or what we're doing. And we're going to then proceed to be teleported into this essentially storage room, which I think the boxes and everything are really selling that vibe. The rolled up rugs, I think we've really nailed it. I think Trixie's made a point that the windows still don't feel great to her. Like the ray casting of light is... like the sunbeams she doesn't like. And I think they're cool. But maybe for a storage room, it doesn't make a ton of sense for them to be here. Oh, I still miss the fades. Okay, so we need to fix the fades in the other rooms. This one's fine. We come in here. If we decide to go this way, we get a door, which is kind of neat. We're going to make that door bigger eventually. We're moving down through this hallway. Yeah, I think this would look way better if these were all 4 highs with the banners up one more. This is okay. I think this might want to be a plant now, a potted plant. That's a new prop we got today, which we didn't have when we started. I'd also like to have it interact here on this book, just to give a little bit of lore about the world. Okay, then we come into this section. We're coming into another hallway, being led by the nose, a little bit by the rugs. There's 2 rugs that cross over each other, but one is significantly larger than the other. And I also like this idea because there was a book that I could read over there, but I can't reach this one, which I like the intrigue of that. Cool. And then I can come into this one. We're going to come into the center room. This is going to be the vault room. The floor changes a little bit here, but leads up to the item that we're coming in here to steal from the Demon Lord for the goddess. These torches need touch up to work in this space, but otherwise I think they're fine. The color's a bit bright too. Oh, I can't walk on this tile for this prop being in this spot. We pulled this all the way to the right. Is that the same spot for this one? No, this one's being blocked here on this side. So I think this prop should actually be moved over to this tile instead of being on this tile still. Very minor thing, but only something you're going to notice if you're walking around the room. Okay, let's fix the fades and let's fix that. Otherwise, I feel pretty happy with the kind of narrative of this space. It doesn't really take us too long to walk through the 4 tutorial rooms either. I was concerned that this might be a little too large, but each room is going to feel rather interesting. I don't know, I'm liking it. So first off, double click, get out of game mode. Let's change this prop here. So this was on this tile. We're going to go to 411. We're going to make this a custom prop position. We're going to go into here, add a dark marble pillar. We're going to bring it all the way to the side, and I think all the way forward. And then they should essentially be overlapping and be in the same position. Definitely looks that way. And then we can clear this one. Yep. But now it'll feel better because that's the spot where you shouldn't be able to move, or at least it'll feel more natural to not be able to step on this square than this square, which feels mostly open. Cool. And I still like the spacing of everything in that room. Now let's add the fades. So in here, we're going to copy this. We're going to come over here. I still think there might be a better way to do this in the future because we keep having to copy and paste these. It's not a huge deal, but we're going to go detail, exit, fade. That's already in the right position. We're going to just copy, paste, and copy and paste. Ooh, did that not work? Oh, I did not copy it. I just moved it. All right. Got it that time. Don't need to change any orientation stuff. That looked great. Let's go back over into the dungeon TO3. We're going to add the fades to this room. I'm going to call this fade. The problem is, a part of me wishes I could just add the prop tile script directly to this orange one, but these prop tiles need to be underneath of this header file, the wall temp pass, which is a terrible name, but there's a script on that they all operate on for what options they have. So they kind of need to be where they are. Oh, this is a decal. Just did this. And now the orientation for this is going to be, if I use this inspector instead, it's easier. It's all west. Okay. So we're going to copy this fade. We're going to move it over 2 tiles to there. Then we're going to copy it again. Bring it over to this one. Now what direction are you facing? East is going to flip, so that's not right. South. Okay. Bring you over. Copy and paste. Oh, did it again? I think I just moved it instead of copying it. Cool. Now this should have fades on the entrances and exits. "30 minutes to finish up the second room. Fairly simple room, and most of the walls were already placed. But we also kind of did a little bit of a pass on each of the other rooms to make sure they were all feeling correct. Oh, all of those need to be walkable. They all need to be walkable. So if we come back into here, we can multi-select these 3 because they all have the same orientation. I knew I was forgetting something with these. And then these 2. And then we need to go back into TO4. And same thing here. There it is. So all 3 of these, none walkable. Good. And then we'll make sure we can actually walk between the rooms. So a little bit of weird clipping on the fades there. Mostly when we enter spaces, we can get into some weird states. I've already bugged it. We'll deal with it later. I guess this action point shouldn't be here for this initial stage of the game either. When we tutorialized all the UI, I guess we forgot to put a disable on that piece. Okay. I'm loving it. This seems great. Let's start adding some cutscenes. I suppose we should look at references. So if we go into Forest TO1, how did we do cutscenes in here? So we have this little yellow dot. Is that our cutscene? That seems to be our beam of light. Okay. So what determines... Oh, is it on the spawn? No, this first cutscene is on enter room. This cutscene is on enter tile. So this is a cutscene tile, which gives it an ability ID that it would like to play, and a trigger name. So ability ID is almost always going to be the same, but the trigger name is the cutscene that we would like to fire. So if we go take a look at the data for these, which is going to be way up here, out of this folder structure, and into the data structure for infinite retries. This is the exit tutorial. So this one has a trigger name associated. Right, we added metadata to these. And this is all under the cutscene folder, and I wrote a new parser for cutscenes. So if I make a new cutscene object and give it metadata in here for what triggers it, whether it's a name that gets triggered on entering a specific tile, or like the entering for the clock tutorial. Yeah, I'm in the forest now. This is the first cutscene that happens when you spawn here. This trigger name is the scene. So this one triggers on load of a specific scene. And this will just happen automatically from our systems. Our code will just we'll send a cutscene trigger of the name of the scene we're loading into, and any cutscenes that are valid and have the required flags already unlocked will play. Okay. So the trick then becomes creating these. So if I wanted to make a new set of these, we'll make a new folder. We're going to just scrap all the old ones because I want to also kind of stress test the cutscene generation stuff. If I wanted to make a new set of these, I need to add both of these objects. So if I was to do, say, a copy of these, I could copy these two. Copy both of these objects, copy, and then paste both of these objects under here. And then if I do that, they're both here, but they don't have any addressable ID names. I think I want an editor for this. It's one of those things that is so absolutely minor, and it's going to probably take me the rest of the stream to build something for this. Let's go through it. Let's see what it feels like. So if we come into here and we add an addressable, what were these? These were with the folder name. Right, we also need a subfolder for room, which is a good organization. So we're going to do, we'll just do TO1. I don't even think we need to have all of that naming. But in TO1, we're going to untick this, retick it again. It should generate most of the folder structure, but we just want Demon Castle. It didn't rename it based off of the new folder structure. We're going to name it Demon Castle TO1 Clock, and then this one will get TO1 Clock Dialogue, I believe. Yes, that is the naming convention we've done in the past. This doesn't have as many folders, but if I start naming them like the room number and then the number above, I think this is fine. And then this needs to get put into here as the cutscene dialogue I would like to use. This has a high priority, and it will trigger not on the forest, but instead based off of our new scene that we've created in the Demon Castle. Here. So we're going to select scene as an easy way to go find that name. And then we're going to come back into the cutscenes. We're going to give that the trigger name. High priority. It will not be repeatable, and it will be happening on intro. So that means it should happen as we load in. So if we save that and then go into the tools, IT cutscene parser, that should have generated an entry for clock tutorial under Demon Castle TO1. And we shouldn't have to do anything else because it's just going to trigger on entering the room. Let's take a look at our JSON files, which is going to be here, and let's look at cutscene design data. There should be a new entry down here, and there is. The tricky part of this is going to be that we know there's currently a timing bug where if we load a scene from editor in Unity, it does not actually fire the cutscenes. So I think the best way to test this is going to be to do something we also want to do, which is go back into this Dungeons folder. Is it Dungeons? Where were the cutscenes just now? This is all the actual data assets. I just collapsed it. Is it under sequences? I think it's under sequences. Yeah, here. So if we go to boot intro, this intro scene is going to try and kick us out of the world and send us to a specific scene. This scene now needs to be the same as what the trigger name was, this scene. So we're going to change it so when we go through boot screen, it won't send us to Forest TO1, it will send us to Demon Castle TO1 after that initial cutscene. Let's go check that out. So we're going to go Scenes, Infinite Retry, and we're going to go all the way to boot in order to have this one trigger. So if we're in the boot scene, we'll maximize for the ability to see everything all at once. Drixie with the hydrate. That's fair. I can do that now while we go through this cutscene. Yeah, I don't want the clock scene to be happening here yet. Because we don't want you to have the clock for the Demon Lord's castle, because we don't want you to fail. This one should be unfailable. Yeah, and this just works. This copy of the cutscene is playing out exactly how we want, but now it's happening inside of this room. Perfect. So that example is working fine. Let's try bringing in the next one, which was the exiting room tutorial. Let's copy that over from Forest TO1 and paste that in here. Again, we're going to have to give it an addressable name, so we're going to come in and we're going to try and give it something reasonable, which is going to be Demon Castle TO1 and then the name of the asset. We're then going to copy that and make another addressable ID in here. We will call this underscore dialogue. This will still be an exit room tutorial trigger. And we're going to go take that data from Forest TO1. And we're going to grab this cutscene object. Does this have to be anywhere specific? No, it looks like I do have a game object parent to hold them in, but it doesn't look like it's required. Pretty sure I've tried to move away from doing it that way. Let's go back to TO1. Underneath the room, we have to paste this object. So put it under. And then we will add both of these here, right in front of the exits. And either tile you step on will trigger that cutscene, and the trigger name will be Exit Room Tutorial. What's interesting about this one is I think technically this will trigger both cutscenes, because they both have the same trigger and neither of them are dependent on you being in a specific room. So this is actually a pretty good test of our cutscene flag system to see if this is working correctly. So first off, let's parse the data. So let's bring this in. And then if we take a look at that parsed data, the priority and the information is here. And we can see there's the exit tutorial and the clock tutorial. They're both going to have the same priority, so I'm going to assume it's going to just choose one based off which one was further down the list. Let's find out. Oh, if we're going to actually see a difference, though, we're going to need to make some difference to the dialogue. Otherwise, they're going to seem identical, and we'll have no idea which one triggered. So let's stop. We shouldn't have to reparse anything. We should just be able to change the dialogue entry asset. We might want to close Unity. I feel like it's starting to get a bit slow. We're going to do that real quick. It will take a moment, but I think it's worthwhile in the long run. And opening Unity again. Cool. It's doing its thing. Just off camera. Well, let's change up the background music again. Let's go with... Oh, probably not Frail. As cozy as that one is. No. Too intense for Fated Warfare right now. Perhaps... Ooh, Water Goddess Basin. This is one we haven't listened to in a while. Let's pull this down off camera for now. So we were just going to modify this exit dialogue. Let's just say Demon Castle. Cool. Just so that we're aware which one we're playing. And in fact, because there's two different triggers here, I think technically we should be able to trigger both just by walking between the two tiles. So let's walk in here. Looks like the path continues deeper into the woods. Looks like the path continues deeper into the woods. So it played the same one twice. Did it not? Ooh, the dialogue didn't update. Oh, because we updated the addressable, but we didn't transfer it over here, so it's still using the original dialogue asset. Fair enough. Fair enough. So this is why I feel like an editor window for this would be handy, to have something that just like generates the two assets and maybe pre-builds one with start dialogue. Oh, also we don't need this flag anymore. Okay, so it chooses the one it finds first in the list. Let's see if some of our systems are working. So if we come into the Demon Castle variation, and let's change its priority to 901 and see if that makes it so it can appear first. We're going to have to reparse. So it rereads that data. And I'm going to just double check to make sure the data got updated. It did. So this one should have a higher priority, so now it should switch the order. Even though there's two things with the same trigger name, it should pick the one that is higher. Oh, is it actually reversed? I don't know if we've ever actually tested our ordering. So if we do 899 instead, or does the ordering not do anything? We're going to have to reparse again. Cutscene parser. We're going to validate that the data did update. It did. Does it now play first in this situation? Coming on down. Yeah, it does. So our ordering is not doing what we think it does. Let's fix that. Cutscene manager, I believe. Backend cutscene manager. We need to delete the old cutscene manager because it's been refactored away. This is going to do a sort compare. How does that compare work? Compare to. Can we just switch the order? So Y, X. I imagine that should work. I'm not super familiar with sorting logic. So if we change this back to 901, parse the data, open VS Code to make sure that it's now reading as 901, and then hit play. Hopefully we should see things in the correct order. We do. Okay, so now we've fixed it so the order is higher is more, or higher means higher priority. So it will play higher numbers first. Next thing I'd like to try is if we go back to 900, it should be playing them in the order that they appear in the list, so that the forest will become the first one again. I'm going to validate that, because again, I want to just, we're testing things. This stuff hasn't really gotten a huge stress test, and it needs it, because we're going to make a bunch of these cutscenes. There's going to be a lot of data by the time we're done. So now setting both of them to having equal priority, it should do the forest first, and it does, followed by the demon castle, and they've both played, so it'll never trigger them again because they're non-repeatable. If we come back in here and we add a requirement to this one that says it requires a specific flag, and I think we create a flag for every single room. So if we grab the name of the room, which should be a flag, and this must be active, we must be in that room in order for this to be fired. Let's see if it will fire the forest tutorial for us now. If it doesn't, that's good, but that only tests to make sure that a flag is disabling it. It's not testing to make sure the flag is actually working correctly. So once we validate that the forest is no longer playing, we'll add the same flag to the demon castle. It's still oh, we didn't parse. And this is why I'm trying to keep that in mind. Parse, check the data. So if we actually come in here and look all the way up to the forest exit, it now has a required flag with what status that flag must be. We check this. Come on down. We get Demon Castle, and we do not get the forest. Second half of checking this, we make sure whether this is set up to also require the same information. Must have the name of this room, which we can copy from here. That flag must be active. We must be in this room in order for this cutscene to be able to be triggered. Okay, walking on down. Failed to parse the data, I'm pretty sure. We can check that. Yeah. Moving a little too quick. Yeah, so that was a false positive. So now we'll check again. With the data actually in, do we still see it's come up with dialogue while in this room, which should be setting that flag for us? We do not. Okay, so if we add a flag, it just fails to play. Okay, so then that means that there's something wrong with our system. How do we want to go about fixing that? Backend cutscene manager. This is going to make sure get is playable, and it's going to validate that all the required flags are valid. Okay. I think the easiest thing to do is going to be putting a breakpoint in here, and we're just going to debug through and see what happened. This is not necessary for us to be able to get the cutscenes up and running, but again, if I'm going to start adding way more cutscenes, like every time you come back to the Goddess Realm, for example, after you finish this first sequence with the Demon Lord, I need to make sure that I have cutscenes that are like, oh, this triggers after you've done X flag. And so this required flag system will need to work. This feels like it's probably more likely a bug with the kind of flags tracking which room you're in. And so we could check that side of things as well. So let's get rid of some of these breakpoints. And we'll start where we're at. We're going to see what happens when we try and check to see if we have a valid cutscene and see if it's saying that flag is invalid or if it's even finding that flag, because perhaps it is not finding it. Where did my Unity go? Thank you. Okay. Trigger. Okay, so we are getting here. It is trying to trigger it. It has one required flag here, which is the forest one, so we don't need to worry about this one. We'll skip over it. Now we have another required flag, which is for the Demon Lord's castle. So we're going to try and go in and check to see if that flag is valid. If that flag is equal to null, which it is, we're going to try and get that flag based off of an ID. That ID should be this. Okay, yeah, so it's trying to create an ID for this. It's doing some converting it to int magic, and then it's going to come into here and it's trying to get a flag by that ID, and it's going to try get that flag out. And it does find a scene flag. So it finds the scene flag, but that scene flag is not active. Did we only half implement this system? We definitely made it so that we get a flag for every scene. Yep. We're doing this in here with the scene data, and we have a scene flag. And this scene flag should get its status set each time we enter a scene. Oh, perhaps this is the same problem where cutscenes don't trigger the first time you enter a room. Is this because we don't go through... I bet you... I'm not sure where it's going to be, but I think we set this flag when we transition. Yeah, we set a scene flag, and it's when we transition between rooms. But because when we load up the scene, we're not transitioning between rooms, we're just loading directly into that scene from Unity, this code never gets run, and thus the flag is never set. So with that being the case, we should be able to validate that this system is working. If we leave, come back, we will actually be setting that scene flag to let us know which scene we're in. That was it trying to do... Oh yeah, now it's triggering the forest. Oh no, that was it triggering the first cutscene for entering that room, because that was our first time entering. So that was a on enter room, and that was triggering the tutorial for the UI. This one should be the exit tutorial now. So this is going to check the forest, which should still be false. And then we're going to check the Demon Lord's Castle, which should come back as valid now. So we can come into here, check the flag we get. They have a scene flag, and that scene flag is active, and that is the required state. So this will be true, and therefore we will say that this is a playable scene. We're going to check a few more. We're going to check a few more, but Demon Lord Castle does play. Okay, so not a bug with the system. It's a bug with loading our scenes directly, which I'm willing to live with. I mean, I suppose we could patch something in here. This is doing a lot of the initial loading. This is not a hard fix. We can do... Hopefully... When does this happen? This is after we've initialized the dungeon? Yeah, this is after everything, right before we swap screens. So we could try setting that flag right before we open the screen. The only problem is we don't know what the scene name is here. Current scene. Current scene dot name should be the value we're looking for. Okay. That's not a hard fix. It's also not a super important fix, but it's not hard. All right. Coming down now, we should see it trigger without having to leave. And yeah, we get in here on the correct flag. Yeah, on the correct flag. Ooh, what other flags were we hitting true on? Why are we getting this playable multiple times? That's an odd bug. Hello, Twitch chatter who is a first-time talker. I hope you're having a good day. Welcome in. This is looping through all the cutscene values for every single cutscene. Coming from trigger cutscene immediately. Odd. I want to try that one more time. I'd like to see why we're hitting that multiple times. I would not expect that. So we're less concerned about this break point. We're more concerned about the fact that we're hitting true multiple times. Ah, because we first check to see whether or not we can trigger the cutscene. So we're checking to see if we have a possible cutscene. And then the second time is still because of can trigger. So we check it twice during this process. It's a little odd and maybe a little inefficient, but okay. And then this one is us actually triggering it. Okay, so the fact that we trigger it, we check to see if we can trigger it twice is a little odd. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. But in Twitch chat you say, I grew up learning code in text files, but for whatever reason I just can't figure out Unity. That's fair. I mean, I have been using Unity for about 15 years, so it feels very cozy and like home to me. Like I can use other game engines and have used a lot of different things. Locutus Exo? Sorry, pronunciation is definitely not my strongest suit. But yeah, so if you have questions, I'm open to like answering. Latin for spoken exile. That's cool. Okay, so we now have validated that our flag system is working. There was never a bug with it. If we were playing the game normally, we would have never had a problem, but it was only because we were loading the scene directly. But we've now fixed that, so even when we load scenes directly, we set the flag for the scene. We set the scene flag correctly, so these things will work. Okay, cool. Validated our cutscene. I love Water Goddess Bastion, this song in the background, but we're going to change it up because it is a bit sleepy. We don't want something too high energy. Maybe we go to Aged Oak. Okay. So we can trigger cutscenes. I still feel like making a new cutscene feels a bit tedious, mostly because we have to copy and paste a bunch of times. I still think that I would like to have like an editor window or something that I can just hit a button, make me the two assets, hook everything up, and away you go. Interesting. That might be more advanced than what I'm used to. I haven't really done a lot of Python in my career. Worked in games a long time. I've had to touch a little bit of HTML, but it definitely wasn't my wheelhouse. Being mostly like a gameplay programmer / now more so a tech designer, just haven't needed to touch a lot of Python. But I've heard for years that it is very powerful, and honestly a lot of our editing stuff that I do through editor windows probably could be done through Python. Even like some of our image processing I believe could be done that way, but stuck in my old-timey ways. Okay, so what do we want to build? What are the actual cutscenes that we want as we move through this very first run that the goddess sends us on? This is probably the most important one of all of them. Narratively, there's a bunch of stuff I want to do, and there's a lot of content creation we just need to do, but this one here, we want to have it pulse reveal tiles as we walk towards it. I'm a little scared of that one, so we're going to start with something a little simpler. We have the ability to make cutscenes. We can edit the cutscenes in here. I'm wanting to try something in tutorial room 2, Demon Castle TO2. I'd like to make it so that we can interact with this book and we get a cutscene, which we have not done before. Lotus in Twitch says, I'm working to just make a text-based RPG similar to Dungeons of Moria, which I want to scale to a MUD for testing the PvP. Interesting. I just want to make this combat system envisioned open source as a gift to the gaming community. That sounds super useful. I would say that, like, well, I guess if you're doing it all like text editor, then some of the references and tutorials I've used for RPGs probably wouldn't be helpful. But Liquidfire blogs is one of the initial starting points for a lot of my project, more so for tactical kind of gameplay experiences. But Liquidfire blogs had some really, really good in like tech. To be fair, it is like, I guess technically that tutorial series and blog series is like 7 or 8 years old, maybe even older now, but still recommendation if you're looking for any kind of good tutorials. Okay, how do we interact with things? Let's go take a look at the goddess scene, and we're going to go steal the goddess scene's interaction on the skill tree. So interact debug. So this is a interact tile, similar to a cutscene tile, and it's going to play and interact addressable. Okay. I think we want a variation of this. So let's go back to where we were. We're going to paste that in here. Likely shouldn't matter where we put it because we're going to loop through every child under room. I'm pretty sure. Interact. Yeah, it's just getting components and children, so it doesn't matter where it is. But we'll still give it a parent. Create empty parent. Create empty parent, and we will make this interactables. Okay, caps lock, calm down. So right now this triggers an ability, and that ability is interact to open skill screen. But we would like to make it so that this instead triggers a cutscene. So cutscene tile How do you work? You're on enter? Yeah, you're going to be sending data into the on enter core tile cutscenes. And how does this work? This adds a bunch of cutscenes essentially. To this list. And then this on enter core tile cutscene, wrong button, find references, is looped over, and we load a ability and we add it to the tile on enter abilities, which in turn is also looped over anytime we enter a tile. The ability on that tile checks to see if it can target the player, and if it can, it'll add it to the response manager to respond at movement time. That's all to say that none of this is really reusable because it's all about the movement system. How do interactions work? When we go to interact with something, how does that work? Those are all interaction tiles. And an interaction tile gets added to an interact addressable ID, which is sent down to the tile, and we instantiate a addressable on interact, which updates the on interact ability. Interesting. So realistically, this is still just an ability. It's just whether it's a list of on-enter abilities for this tile or a interact ability that we're checking. So you're able to apply labels to locations to trigger events, basically. At the core of my system is really a couple of different things, but I have this kind of generate level data from WorldGeo. It's really more than what the name implies, but essentially it's looping through all of its children, checking for specific tile types. So all these green ones are props, and so each of these, like this one here, 3.9, I just finished spending the last weekend and several streams getting this up and running so that we can give it a prop and we can kind of move it back and forth and change its position in the world. And when I raycast the environment to figure out the floors and everything else, it also compiles all of this information into an asset. And that asset gets read when we load the game and generates all this information such that we see all the tiles loading in piece by piece. And so for some of these things, we have like on enter tile abilities. And when you enter a certain tile or interact with a certain tile, it will allow you to have something happen. So when we exit a scene, it's actually entering onto a tile, and the ability that is being performed is a basically a transition ability. So when I enter onto this tile, it triggers an ability which makes everything fall away, it loads up a next scene, and then this has an on enter effect. Basically it plays the on enter ability and walks you in, but if I walk back onto this one, it triggers the exit. And so we have an on enter system, and then the interact system is a little less robust. It really is just a single ability can be assigned to each tile, and those aren't interacting on what you're standing on, it's interacting based off which tile you're facing. So oddly, I'm not sure why we didn't get something here. That may be because we didn't actually save. Yeah, we didn't actually save. I have also set up a on save trigger, so whenever we save, it triggers a function inside of the raycast script that will recompile and kind of grab all of the underlying game objects and get all the information. Oh, the UI's turned off. Okay, so the button still works, but we are still in a tutorial mode, and a bunch of flags are turning off our UI until we reach certain tutorial states. Which is interesting, because that means that when we come in here, we're not going to be able to see any of our interact prompts. There's supposed to be a piece of UI that shows whether or not we can interact, and that UI probably shouldn't be getting gated. Let's go take a look at core front-end system. So under the front-end system, we have UI combat screens. None of this is, well, it might be combat base. Where do we actually show interactions? Ah, it's underneath the command section. So the command section here has like displays all 4 buttons that we can show. If we go into pure ref real quick, this is how that normally looks in the bottom right, showing you which actions you can perform to attack enemies. But because we have set this up so that this has a required flag component, which requires that the ability tutorial is complete, none of these game objects are going to be set to active, and therefore this isn't being shown, but also the command interact isn't being shown either. Unfortunate. Now, is command interact being driven by... Yeah, it's being driven by this unit data. Well, simple solution would be to move this down a level. So instead of having this effect here, let's open combat base. No, sorry, not combat base, combat ability select. And then in here, instead of having the required flag be at this level, let's put it above here. So we'll create an empty parent. We're going to rename this to ability tutorial. And then this thing is going to get copied. I probably could have just moved the object. And then it needed an auto deactivate, which I'll type in here rather than copy and paste because it'll be slightly faster. Cool. Then we can drag all of this out from underneath here. And this thing can get deleted. In theory, that should be all we need in order to see the information appear. We'll go back to tutorial room 2. We'll save the front end and we'll hit play. Okay. Fingers crossed. We can't move. We completely broke the entire UI. Good, 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 good. There was more references that needed to be hooked up. It was not as simple as that. Not too much harder, but definitely missed a step or two. So we can come back in here, go to screens, go back into ability select. It looks like the screen itself needed some sort of reference. Yeah, to a generic component, which was this thing now. Essentially, the required flag component is a type of screen component, and the screen needs to manage that. So come back into here, dungeons, TO2, save that, and then hit play. I think, yeah, I think that should work. Still complaining. Oh, do we override that data? So I modified it in the prefab, but I think we may auto modify that data in here somehow. Yeah, it's also getting referenced by the base screen because of some bad code. I mean, not bad code, just like the order of operations of the screen loading and the management of screen components, yada, yada, yada. The base screen needs to update it as well. We can't go from here. We have to go back. Fingers crossed. This stuff feels a little hacky. We've done so. Also, for context, for people new in and not familiar with the content, yay, R1 to discover, which opens a screen that doesn't look very good here. I've been on vacation from my real job as a software engineer / designer person. I guess I'm a designer now. It's still funny. My instinct is to say software engineer because I've been a software engineer for like 10 years, but only a designer for like 5. Those numbers don't sound right. Designer for 4, engineer for 11. I don't know. Anyways, point is we're on week 4 of my vacation over Christmas. I took a bunch of time off I had saved to work on the side project. And we are trying to get to a demo by January 5th. I don't think we're going to make it, but that's a big part of what's going on today, or this week, the last few weeks. All right, now that we have the UI showing up, so we know that we're actually seeing the interact, if we swap that interact for a different ability, it would work. The problem is the ability we want to swap it for is like immediate cutscene, and the way that we wrote that, it needed a more complicated set of data for the cutscene information, because it sets the cutscene trigger of that ability. I think the easiest thing to do here would be to change it so instead of having an addressable ID for the interact that we'd like to have happen, we instead just change it so all interacts are cutscene triggers. And they can do more than that, but they can have an ability that isn't even causing a cutscene to happen. It's just weirdly named then. Why does it have a priority? Oh, because it's also overriding the response priority for the ability. What does that do? It gets passed in. Right, and this is more for movement stuff. So if you walk onto a tile that has multiple like cutscenes that it's trying to figure out, or events or whatever, the response priority determines the order in which they appear. Okay. Okay, yep. I'm going to use clarity over simplicity. So we're going to make it so this thing doesn't use a cutscene data. We're going to make a new class here. We're going to call this interact data. Sure, core tile interact data. And it will take an ability ID and a trigger name. I can't imagine it needing a priority. And the idea here is that this data can be used to generate an ability and set its trigger name if it finds a trigger name under that ability. Now, making this change is going to break all of our existing abilities, or all of our existing labels that reference an ID? Is that true? No. Yes, because we're going to need to change interact tile to use that data instead, which is going to break our references. Okay. Okay, so we're going to do it this way for now. We're going to loop through these. We're going to try and get the positional data, and then instead of doing this, we're going to do a similar pass-through of the data here. Happy New Year's from the future, says Magnus. Appreciate it. Thank you. Hope you're having a fantastic New Year's. In the future. What's the future like? Is it good? I hope it's a good future. So we're going to essentially bypass the old system. Which will be defaulted to null. And then here we're going to grab the interact tiles data. We're going to pass it through into our tile management system. Then from there, we're going to take that and we're going to inside of the tile, we're going to need to do something similar. So we're not going to do tile data dot interact addressable ID. We're going to do tile data dot interact data ability ID, and we're going to load that object of that ability, which is essentially a prefab. And instead of using the default kind of on interact load here, we're going to make a lambda. We won't need to set the priority, but we will want to grab the tile data dot interact data and set the trigger name if it finds this. So this is not going to be guaranteed anymore. The workflow of a cutscene implies that this must have a cutscene trigger, but interacts may not have this. And so we need to then be a little bit more safe and say, if we find this on this object, then we may set the trigger name. And then instead of adding it here, we need to go see what onInteract was doing down below. onInteract. That was setting this and reducing the count, the load count for load management. So interact data in here, we're going to set this to the ability. And we're also just going to fix our spacing and rename this to interactability for clarity. This all seems fine otherwise. Sure. So any of our existing interact tiles are now broken. So we need to go find those. I think it's only the 2 so far. Again, trying to be safe and not going too crazy on building out content until we've kind of stress tested things. So this will be an immediate cutscene with a trigger name. So now we can give it a, hey, this is the cutscene we'd like to do. And I think most of our interacts will probably still be cutscenes. Now, if we go back into the Goddess Realm, this is the real test, because I think this is the only spot we're using interact otherwise. This interact now becomes the open skill screen with nothing here. Let's validate that we can still do the interact. Oh, right. This is super small, super tiny. So we're going to come over here. And we can. We're in a bad state because we don't have any abilities yet because we haven't gone through the tutorial flow. Oh, it's an optimistic future. Okay. I hope so. I still don't know. It might be mid-January by the time we actually manage to get something out, but who knows at this point. I'm just going to keep moving forward because you know what? I'm having a blast. I'm having a super fun time. And at the end of the day, I think that's the point. So now, if we want, we could have this read interact. How do we update the text for an interaction? Like, is that just default to discover at all times? Because if we're fixing this right now, we should probably fix that too. Let's take a look at the... I'm going to just remove this from existence, I think. That should be all of them covered. Okay, fix that. Nope, wrong button. Where would we find it? Where would we find it? What's an easy test we could do for this? Is there a cutscene we could just have happen? Enemy tutorial. Let's try that. I don't think there's any requirements on that, so if we walk up and we just say enemy tutorial, I think it should just happen. But it's still going to say discover. Where is that coming from? Ooh, R1 to exit. Why do you say exit? So there is something controlling that. Is it on the ability itself? So this is not going to be in here. This is the addressable name of the object. So if we want to find it, we can do it this way. It is. It's on the default display information for the ability. Fun. Okay. So then that is an extra piece of information that Interact has that the cutscene doesn't. So we want to add a string display name, which at some point I need to implement a localization system. I probably should have done it first. It should have been the first thing I did like 4 years ago, but we did not, which means I am setting myself up for a world of pain at some point as we rip up all of this and replace it with loc IDs. But for the time being, we will keep moving forward. So in here, we need to also find get component. This shouldn't be in children. This should be on the same level. Ability display information, specifically the default one. I can't imagine it not having this information, so we should just be able to get... Oh, what is it gonna be called? Oh, is it actually inside the design data? It is. Is it just name? Tile data dot... Interact data dot display name? Is my brain the same? It is not. Let's go back and see what exit was called in Unity. Unity, I believe in you. It is just name. Okay. So if we update the name of the default display information with whatever name we want to give for the interact, that should have it show up correctly. So now the tile decides what the name is. So we come in here and we do display name read and we hit play. That should work. Okay, well, a couple of weird things about this. Number one, it doesn't go away. Once we read, it locks us into a state where that UI is constantly up. I suppose that makes sense, because this ability is probably taking over some system. I may have bumped the mic. I'm sorry. Okay. Shoot. Where does it disable the ability? Because we load this ability up. Get interactability here. Inside the unit. If it has an interact, it updates the ability with that information. This all happens on unit place. So if that's the case, when we move to a different tile, that interact should just go away. Because this happens on place. I can write like a new type of sequence step for these cutscenes that like disables interact. That's not too tricky. I'm just more confused why it's not doing what I would think it would do anyways. Because I probably don't want it to stay up. Oh. Oh, it never goes away. It doesn't matter if we activate the ability or not. Really? Really? How does that work? So we're updating the right trigger input. That's triggering it. That's triggering it. So as long as the abilities does not equal null, which is something that AI do, it should get in here and it should set the right trigger value to null. And once it gets set to null, it should disable the UI. This implies the UI is not getting refreshed, would be my guess. I would think that we are hitting this and we're setting it to null. Let's put a print. Okay. I bet you this is because we're using a very special case to have the UI down here disabled, but displaying this information. Where's my console? No prints. I saved. Even more suspicious. Oh wait, no, we don't have prints turned off. Okay, well, listen. We have so many prints nowadays. I need to maybe rework the debugger a little bit. Let's just search. I need to like make a debug class that allows me to toggle on like frame-based ability or frame debugs versus regular debugs. I don't know. Interact. No? Ability is too common of a word, but it wasn't seeing ability is null with that exact spacing. Because we should at least see that for the first time. All right, fine. No console prints, just debugging. Let's go. Prints should have been faster, but I guess not. All right. Playable cutscene. Oh, it's checking to see whether or not we can trigger it. That's neat. And we can. So it's going to set that ability to here. We are getting to this print. It is not null. Okay. So if we move again, it does not trigger again. Why does it not trigger again? Does it trigger here? No. Does it trigger here? Yes. So we're setting the target, setting content, setting current. Abilities is set to something. Tile has interact. Interact immediately. Really? $613? No, we're definitely looking at something that should not have an interact associated with it. Does everything get an interact now? Did we write this code poorly? If interact data does not equal null or white space. Like, did we make a interactability for every single tile by mistake somehow? No, because there should only be one of these. Okay. Also, if that's the case, I would think that we would see an interact for every single one of the tiles as we move around. So we're on tile data for some tile. Does the tile data not have information about which tile it is? I think it has a position. Yeah, here. 014. Okay. 015. Okay, that's not a good sign. $114. This is implying that there are a ton of interact datas for every single one of these. This should only be doing this for tiles that have interact data. Did I add like a weird loop in here somewhere? I guess not, because it is showing different positions for each one. So this is saying there's a ton of different interacts all over this scene. Basically in every tile. Yeah, every tile has an interact. Okay. It just doesn't show any UI for it, I guess, because the UI is empty for the names. Maybe? So something in here went terribly wrong. Because there should only be one data being added. Unless the default data for this is... No, it should be default data null. So unless we set it, it shouldn't have anything. Although every single one will have a default information for immediate cutscene. Okay. Let's... Where are we at? Can we please just continue? Call stack? Unity, give me control back, please. Thank you. Okay, so then we raycast the environment. What have I done poorly? So inside of here, we're setting up prop data. Okay. We find the one interact tile. And for the one tile, we update it. Yeah, we're only updating a single one of these. So then if we look at tile data... Okay, yeah, we only hit that once. Will you not show me tile data? Level tile data. Yeah, every single one of these has a default value. It does not default to null. Even though I asked it to. That's probably because at the end of the day, a lot of these are scriptable objects. And so scriptable objects are public variables. So Unity will auto update this data with something. Okay. So I guess we need to write some sort of code that clears every entry. Do we loop through the level data at all? We set it to a new list. We don't really loop through it. We just kind of add stuff to it. Oh, here we do. Does this happen? Yeah, of course this happens after we've already done the stuff, though. Okay. So I think we need to take this tile data that we're about to put into the level data, and we need to wipe its information. This feels odd. I don't like the way this feels. I want to... I want it to default to null. I could make it not public, and then I could control it. Could add like a default value to whether or not it's been set, but I really don't like that either. Because this is a list, unless we add to it, it's simply an empty list of public values and we won't use it. And that's why we don't run into that problem with this one. But we do run into this problem if we just make it a straight object. I know what the problem is. This problem is now the solution. Okay. Okay. I don't love it, but this is probably the simplest solution, is we just don't default to anything. And then in here, this can have this data. It already will remember it, and that's okay. If we want to, we can come to the scene whenever we want to copy it. Or we can just keep a reference to this somewhere. Worst case, I could even make a custom editor for Interact Tile that just has a button to populate it with the default cutscene, like hard-coded value. But if we now re-raycast the environment, I'm hoping all of these will be empty string values because they'll never have been set. So this is position 014, which is somewhere off in the middle of nowhere. I would expect that this has interact data. Its interact data is null now. Okay. Wait. Its interact data is null? What I did shouldn't have fixed that. Okay, maybe I didn't understand the problem. If we... What is happening? Okay, so this is null. So we should go through all of these, setting everything to have null. And then if we go into the game and we hit play on the tile, when it tries to load the addressable data, this should be null, in which case we should get an error there. Because all the data should be null. But now it's not. Now it has information. We should still get in here one time, but only one time. Okay, so something about saving it out, it like initializes it to its like every single one to having a default object for some reason. It's not at data time, but it is happening at some point when we generate everything. And now we only have an ID here when we're looking at this. It does like... It updates a little weirdly because we turn pretty slowly. We need to write some animation code to make it so that our idles don't like finish before we switch. So what's happening is if we're idling like this, it won't turn to face until that current idle animation is finished. And we need to make it so it's interruptible. But yeah, now that's working. So if we trigger the ability, we should also update our update our thing as well. So judgment call? I think it's a judgment call here, but I think what I might do is I might just make it so that anytime we update our interact, get ability update at input. Can we do this inside of the ability select screen? Ability select screen. Combat ability select screen. On right trigger, perform. Close to destination. Can we also do we have access to the abilities here? We do. Unit.getAbilities. We're going to make it so if you hit right trigger, it also disables that entry. That might have other problems. We might need to make this more custom, and based on each ability, gets to decide whether or not it wants to do this or not. But for the time being, I think most times if you hit the button, it should clear it. No, I just immediately thought of a reason why you wouldn't want this. And it's literally the only other interact we have in the game. If we come into the Goddess Realm here, and we walk over to the skill tree, and we interact to do the thing here, and then go back, I might want to go back in again. Okay. Yep. So this can't be an automatic feature. So that means we need to modify the cutscene. Let's come into here. We're going to go look for our scene data. We're going to go look at our cutscene immediate. That one. So when this triggers, it has a sequence ability step which triggers. We're going to make a new version of this, which is interact cutscene, which is going to be a slightly different game object. And then we're going to have to make a new trigger ability effect. We're going to call this, well, when Unity finishes loading, we're going to call this interact cutscene ability effect. Gonna rename that. Here. I don't think this does the same logic as the original one. I think what this is literally doing is just adding a action sequence step, which is going to take a reference to a generic function. Where's an example of that? Do that with lambdas from time to time. Yeah, it can just be public void. Okay. And this public void one is going to be clear right trigger ability. And we are going to add that sequence step in here, and it's going to do... we need to look at another ability effect for how to get the attacker. Oh, is it the attacker? I think it's the target in this situation, because the ability will play with the unit as a target. So I think it's get unit on target. Oh, which means this can't be a function. It needs to be a lambda if that's the case, which is why we often use lambdas, even though I'd rather have it separated out. Okay, so we're going to grab the target. We're going to get the unit from the target. We're going to get the abilities, and then we're going to do the same call we would do inside of the UI for the select ability select screen. We're going to grab this call. We're going to go save that. We're going to come back over here. We're going to do update abilities, right trigger. Clear. Sure. Wordy, but it's fine. So this is a very specific sequence step to do something very specific. It's a very specific sequence step to do something very specific. Great, Tolhi. Really appreciate that. That's really clarity that we need here right now. Okay. So we're going to make a new one of these. Okay. This is the cutscene immediate. This is going to be the cutscene interact. Okay. Now, with all that being done, we just need to go back to TO2. Modify this read one to, instead of using the immediate cutscene, it uses the interact cutscene. And now when we click this, it should clear. And we got rid of that old logic, so it should be fine. Thank you for the follow. Appreciate people stopping in and giving the follows. Makes me feel like we're doing stuff. Even if people just stop in for a second and just drop a follow, I feel like it's like we're making something that people are interested in, which is exciting. We're going to reorder this so that the clear happens before the cutscene, because what was happening there was the cutscene played out with the dialogue, and then once the dialogue ended, then we cleared the interact. We're going to do it first before we trigger it. Interact. Yeah. Okay. And then if I wanted to let you re-interact with it multiple times, I think I could. The only gotcha is you're going to need to walk away and then walk back, which I think is okay. Now, this is currently triggering the enemy tutorial, so if we flag the enemy tutorial as repeatable, and then we run the parser for the cutscenes to read all this data into JSONs. JSON files everywhere. If we then interact, this cutscene is repeatable. So if we walk back, it'll re-add it to the UI. If we wanted it so that after the dialogue was done, it like came back and re-added it. We could do that, but then I'd probably want to do this in a slightly different way. I'm going to think on it. Because maybe what we should be doing is just hiding the interact UI when the cutscene is playing, and then when the cutscene's over, we just return it. Regardless, that's all up to the cutscene itself now. It's all handled within the cutscene, so we're gonna just assume that it's all gonna work correctly. The UI map side of it is now handled. We have an ability to set some information. We can give it a trigger name. We can give it a display information. How the interact appears and disappears can be modified for every single one globally just by modifying the interact cutscene and making different sequence steps or having flags modify the UI. So the big thing here is that it lets me build a bunch of interactable cutscenes without having to worry about needing to rebuild all the data in the future. So if we come into here, let's copy the extra exit room tutorial. Let's paste this in here. Let's give this an addressable ID. It's going to be the URL starting at Demon Castle. And then at the end, we're going to remove the word asset. We're going to copy that. This one will have the same addressable with the word dialogue. We then have to grab this entry and put it into this dialogue here. This is going to have a normal priority. I can't imagine you would ever have two things happen at the same time. It doesn't need a flag, and it will be repeatable. And this will be TO2 book, Demon Castle, TO1, TO2 book. This will be a... How is the other one? It was working on end of turn? I guess that makes sense because the response type doesn't matter here because it's not actually queuing a response. It's triggering the cutscene immediately. Yeah. So the response type doesn't actually matter here. So it can just be none, I guess, for what I think is a more clear experience. Book. Super great. Okay. This is here. We can see that that's now updated correctly. It doesn't need this exit tutorial. I think almost all of these can get rid of these flags now. Now that we've updated our whole system to use cutscenes, which is something we did last week, we no longer need to set flags so that these things won't happen again. Once we've set a cutscene as non-repeatable, it will not re-trigger, and we don't need a flag to track that, which really does make these quite simple. I think that I could make a widget or something, or a window that just lets me say, hey, I would like to make a cutscene. I'd like to put it in this folder URL. I would like to have it have these default parameters, and I hit go, and it makes it with the right name, sets up all the addressables, makes a sequence step in the first one that points to the dialogue that it auto-generated for me. Yeah, I think there's a tool that could make this a lot more efficient. But at the same time, it's also only like copy and pasting 2 objects, then giving them 2 addressable IDs, and then hooking up one of the addressable IDs into the sequence step. It's not that many clicks, but it could be better. Cool. So now if we come into here, we're going to rename this. Think, oh, we also need to set up the interact to have the new name. I think that's all we have to do in order to make an interact. So now we can add interacts all over the place that have little bits of dialogue. We can have it so you can walk up to the door and get an interact. In fact, that sounds fun. Let's do that. So let's start here. Ooh, didn't trigger. Oh, because we need to parse the cutscenes. Data has been updated. We need to do a parse. Walk up here. Book? Sorry, too loud, too loud. Too in character. Okay, let's now do the same thing for the other one. So we're gonna do, I think I just copied that all the way down here. Yeah, okay. Where did we go? This is all the ability stuff. This is all part of core. Now we're into data. Now we're into cutscenes. I don't like the name of this. I think this can just be book, but the addressable ID is more complicated. I think the trigger name is should the trigger name be the same as the addressable name? Because if we wanted to have multiple books, it would be fine. Just trying to figure out naming conventions. Like, maybe the addressable name and the trigger name should be the same in this context? Mostly because this is a one-off that we probably won't have multiple triggers for. I don't really know. Interesting. Okay, so then we'll name this one. This becomes door. This becomes door. This gets the same addressable name as this one, but with door instead of book. This gets the dialogue part taken off the back. This one has the word dialogue on it. This one does not. Then we copy this interactable, move that over to be on this tile where the door is. Like so. We give it the door. We add the word open. Open, thank you. And then we can copy this object and paste it over here. We save all this, and then we also need to make sure that we hit cutscene parse. And I think we should have 2 interacts now. Open. Yeah, so it's relatively easy for us to make a bit of dialogue that appears just by looking at something. Okay. Hero feels super unresponsive with the idle. That's something I feel like we have to fix. I mean, okay, jokes aside, like, I think this one's relatively easy. Probably just do that. Okay, you know what's kind of silly? I think we can do something really funny here. Because you have to be facing the door. What if... There's a couple of different ways we can do this. I'm just having fun now, but if we just do animation parameter, this is going to be hero, I think. Let's run the game and find out. I'm not sure which entity we need to grab in order to be able to modify the animation of. I think it might just be player, honestly. What is your ID? And this is going to be on the animation, so that's going to be up here on the container. Animation component. We're looking for your entity ID. What is your entity ID? Yeah, this is just player. Easy, straightforward, easy to remember. Totally would never forget. So if we go player, blocking animation, shove, which will be a trigger. That should be all we have to set. I think this will cause the shove animation to play. We don't have a push door animation is part of the reason I'm doing it this way, but we can add a little bit more clarity. Oh. Yeah, that failed. Did we get an error of any kind? We did not. We can't move or anything, so it is trying to wait for this animation to finish. Is shove not the right trigger name? Let's go to scene view. Click on hero, go to our animator. Should be shove, capital S O V, which does move us forward once it plays. That's odd. Entity player, shove, trigger type. It is a trigger type. Do I have to... Oh, I bet you I have to set the bool parameter for even for triggers. I think I remember this being kind of odd. Yeah. I don't think that animation makes a ton of sense there. Partly because we're only playing the animation. Technically, Shove has a lot more going on than that. If we were to look at the Shove ability... Even Shove effect. It plays the animation for it, or shows the name, triggers the animation. It waits until this pause event players. It holds there, punches the world. Yeah. We could operate with both systems. That's kind of fun. Does that work? If we went and made a Shove cutscene, and Shove cutscene is going to do a lot of this logic not on the attacker but on the target, is the only real major difference. So we'd want to animate Shove, wait, offset, delay, offset, punch world, exposure, particle effect, reset position, set animation speed back to 1. And then we don't need to do any of the combo stuff. I don't think this just works, because we would need to put all of this in here. We clear the right trigger, play all of this information, but now have to retarget everything to the, because the target is going to be who's we're modifying. Target, 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 target. Punch world is fine. Oh, I was wondering what this object was for. Okay, that's what that's being used for. Okay. Branch effect, exposure. These things don't care about who we're targeting. Particle effect, melee 1. That'll just play. I think it might play on the character, though, in this situation, because we don't give it a target. Yeah, we might want to have an extra bit of parameters here for whether or not we're playing on the target or on the attacker. Regardless, then we need to reset the position of the target, delay, and then reset the animation speed of the target. The only thing that I think is weird about this is some of these things have like offset values, so I think they assume that we've selected a specific location. Internally, this is wanting a... If we're doing defender... I guess it's using the direction of the player to determine this stuff. Yeah, we can give it a shot. So this thing will now be... Shove cutscene. And then if we come into our scene... this is getting unwieldy. On each of these, we play a Shove cutscene. This should be the power of our abilities. I think there's a piece of the puzzle I'm still missing, but the idea here is that we can start intermingling and, you know, making all these things work. That, I mean, that did it. We did play it twice. Oh, yeah, because we still are playing it in the actual, like, dialogue section of it. So in here, we can now kill this one because it's being handled by the ability side of things. Yeah. That's why we're getting 2. Oh, we're running over again today. We are over time. Yeah, so like maybe not my favorite animation because we're like clipping into the door with this, but that's still really cool that we could relatively quickly create a new ability that does all the same stuff that the shove effect does, but only the parts we need, retarget it because the player is now the target of the active ability, and it just works. And then we still play the cutscene afterwards. Like, this is a bit dramatic, but we could even do like a walk up, activate, hero tries to push the door. If you walk away and come back, we set a flag on that first one you try and push it, and then hero does a slam on the door. That could be fun. I don't know if it's good like design, but the system supports it. Okay. So we've kind of got the cutscene system up and running again. We've got interact cutscenes working, which is flexible and can do a lot of stuff. Now the next thing would be to set up that like pulsing revealing cutscene, but even that shouldn't be too hard because like even here when these pieces all come in, that's all happening through a cutscene already. Like whenever we enter a tile, the transition enter scene, this thing is basically just going through and doing a tile sight from rows. So it's trying to find offsets from wherever the current target tile is. Might be a little tricky to figure out who's the target and where things are coming from, but I think we could probably do the exact same tile sight effect on an ability that is happening from the object in the center of the final room here, and it just basically every time it activates it just goes out further with a little radius. It should be relatively straightforward to set up. Out of curiosity, how many steps are there here? We start standing here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So by the time we get to here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If we have a cutscene trigger every time you move forward in the room, this should have went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It'll basically meet you in the middle, and it should reveal everything because everything around it should be at least 5 tiles away. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So yeah, so depending on some timing, this should reveal the whole room. And we can have it like do corners a little bit further out than it should at certain points to make it look consistent. Yeah, I think this is going to work. Okay, we're a bit over time today though. We're going to probably stop here. I feel like I just need a bit of a break. It's been a mad dash couple of days. We are taking tomorrow off. I'm probably going to continue working on getting the rest of these cutscenes in, trying to figure out what the dialogue is for Hero saying whatever, and then try and get this like ending to the point where you pick up the amulet, and then essentially you're going to get pulled back to the Goddess Realm, and then you'll get sent into the forest for your very first run. But this item here is meant to be like the Omni weapon, so once you pick this up, the goddess, when you go back to the Goddess Realm, will tell you that like, oh, this object will take on the form which you choose, and you'll be able to choose between sword, mace, or bow to begin with. And then once you choose your starting skill, she'll send you down into the forest where you'll run into your first enemies and start combat, and some of that tutorial stuff will happen. And then the actual core loop can kind of begin from that point onwards of upgrading your ability skills, which will unlock new skills, etc., etc. But this is kind of the missing piece. And I think this has come together really nice. I feel like chairs are maybe another thing we're missing. I feel like we got all these little tables. We might want little chairs as well. Anyways, we'll be back on Thursday at 11 to 1, and then maybe a 3 to 5 stream with Drixie, where we'll kind of going over some art stuff. I anticipate we'll probably want to start looking at the forest scenes. These are feeling very well art decoed, but we need to go back and take another look at the trees, the bushes, especially with all of the ability to manipulate the position of each prop like a fair amount. We should be able to create some really dynamic feeling forest areas. I think that's it for us today. The question is, do we want to try doing a raid today? I just don't feel confident enough, I don't think. I don't know anyone else in this category. I just feel like people raided us yesterday, and it's like, maybe we should return that favor to folks, but I just don't know enough people yet. Maybe one day. But I'm not seeing anyone immediate here, so I think we're just going to call it. I'll be back in a couple of days. Keep an eye on Discord and the schedule on Twitch if you need more updates. Like, comment, do the things. I don't know. You do you. Have a wonderful New Year's, and I'll see you all next year. For now, this is going to be Tolhi signing out. Later, folks.